Welcome to Seven Figures, a podcast where we talk about entrepreneurship, financial literacy, generating wealth, and just how to get your business going and make the most of it from people who've built seven-figure businesses. Today we have the property episode. I know a lot of people have been wanting this one. This is one where we talk about buying a house, mortgage, how to get credit, how to invest in property, and we have the man himself, Trevor Tacky. This brother has been in the industry for over 20 years. He's selling properties from anywhere between 250,000 to 20 million. So this is real eight-figure business, right? All right, cool, man. No, but this is the education that I want people to have. So let's get into it. Bro, let's tell me a bit about your journey. So from what I understand, you have your own company now, Trevlyn Properties. But you started out at Andrews and Partners where you worked for 9 years.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, cool. So how do we get to this point? And when I say how do we get to this point, I want you to give people a bit of background. You studied consumer psychology, right?
I did, yeah.
Cool. So take us through that journey. How did you get there, and how did you get to where you are eventually?
Wow, that's going way back, Suli, because I don't look as young as I feel at the moment.
Don't we all, bro? Don't we all?
But yeah, so I studied consumer psychology over in North London University, Met University, and it was one of those courses that I thought would be quite helpful. Because when I did my A-levels, I did it in psychology, and I thought I was going to go into more like psychotherapy, that sort of thing. But I also like sales and I also like marketing. So when I was applying to uni, there was a course that came up that said consumer psychology. It was more about behavioral patterns of people wanting to buy and how they go about buying things and what they look for and that sort of thing. So I thought this is quite interesting for me. This is something that potentially could work. I think it all stemmed actually from a film that I watched back in the day called Boomerang.
Oh, serious?
Yeah, Eddie Murphy. Yeah.
Wait,
so I don't know.
What's the correlation?
Well, he was doing marketing. He was a marketing exec.
Yes.
And he was doing marketing. And I think the whole persona, the whole atmosphere, the whole environment looked like something that I really wanted to get involved in. And so that's kind of what spun me into the advertising and marketing sort of like industry. And so when I finished uni, I was just like, wow, what can I do? And I went and worked for a company that did specialize in training and development. They were called Marcus Evans. Okay. I don't know if I can mention the name, but that's what they were called. And they kind of put you through training, like serious training when it comes to sales, when it comes to pitching and things like that. And did really, really well over there, but subsequently moved on from there. Worked for another small organization. This was at the beginning of internet booming. And I worked for this organization which was internet based. This was before e-commerce came out.
Oh, wow.
And they had a small little booklet, almost like Yellow Pages, but smaller version of it, like an A5 size.
So
and
for those of you who don't know what the Yellow Pages is, just because people are a bit younger, I know it's a directory whereby it's like Google, but it was like a book.
It was a book form, absolutely, A to Z of everything, all the businesses in London and across, basically. So that's what it was. And but this was focused for internet. And this was before like you could have like companies that were doing like Net-a-Porter where they're doing e-commerce and things like that. So you use the A5 booklet, look into it, and then you can go into certain categories. Oh. So maybe you wanted fashion, maybe you wanted music, maybe you wanted jewelry. Then you go into those categories and then you see the companies that you wanted to call or check their websites out and so forth.
Yeah.
And so all they had was a page and we were selling them advertising space online. So that's what we were doing, and we're trying to get them to use it and display their products and the company for e-commerce basis. But back then they weren't buying into it. They were just like, I just use the internet and I just have a page where you got potentially email basically, and just send contact through. And we were convincing them to actually use it more for e-commerce and sell things on there. So I was there for a while. Did really, really well. The company offered to buy me a house.
Really?
Yeah, the company offered me to buy me a house so I could stay closer to workplace. And for me, I didn't really want to sell my time that much because they wanted to start from 7 in the morning and finish literally at 7 at night. So that was a bit much, and I was quite young then. I was in my early 20s.
Yeah, you need that evening time.
Yeah, so I just kind of weighed it up, and in the end, I decided to move into property.
So, so
I decided to move into property. That was a little change there. I ended up in property actually by accident.
Okay,
it was really weird. I remember leaving my company that I was telling you about with the internet-based directory. And I remember picking up the Evening Standard one day and looking into the Evening Standard, and they had in it different sections for work. for employment and for jobs and things like that, editorials and that. And one part of it had negotiator inside of it. So I didn't know at this time what negotiator meant. So I actually thought it was something that was in a film of Samuel L. Jackson. Yeah. So I was hostage, yeah, that's what I thought it was, to negotiate. So I was like excited. I was like, this is interesting in the Evening Standard, right? So at that time I was like, look, I need to get myself into a work environment, back into work and things like that. So I picked it up and I made a phone call to the company. They then explained to me that they're a company that deal with property and they're based in Hammersmith. At that time I was living in Catford. So I was like, okay, cool. They said, look, come down for an interview. Apologies.
Oops, no, that's a big no, bro. It's all good.
So they literally called me up and said to me, do you know what, come down for an interview. So I went down for the interview. Luckily for me, I got a job. And that's when I discovered that this was about residential property, to rent properties, to sell properties. And that's what they did. They offered me the job, but from Southeast London to get to Hammersmith over there was too far. So I managed to find a job closer, which was in Lewisham.
Okay, so you didn't take that job? I
didn't take that job, no.
Okay.
I actually got a job offer on the same day in a real estate company or an estate agent in Lewisham, and that's where I started my whole sort of like business and that in the property industry. So, estate agent.
Sorry to cut you off. So if I'm correct, you got into the property market because you saw a hostage movie yourself.
Yes.
So you didn't have no experience.
I had no experience. No, I had no experience whatsoever. I had a sales background because I was doing the sales with the training with Marcus Evans, that also did the directory online stuff. And I ended up in sales, totally in residential sales by accident.
So is I want to know like how realistic this is. So is it because is there a time change now? Is there a generational change? Is it because that was back then that you could get away with that? Or
yeah, I think back then it was if you had some sort of get up and go attitude and you were target driven.
Yeah.
Because sales in essence, it has a general foundation where you can translate what the benefits are, transferable skills. So what the benefits are with the features, and you can sell the product that way around. So back then, that's what they were looking for. And so that kind of worked in my favor in having sales experience and having hit targets and exceeded targets in my previous company. So they looked at that and they said, "Oh, give me a try."
Cool. I think
that's how I got into it.
I think that's dope because I feel like a lot of people miss opportunities just because they don't have the confidence, you know what I mean? And you obviously knew what you were good at, and you just went into there with that confidence.
Yeah.
So tell me this: you go into this industry that you wasn't aware of.
I wasn't familiar with it at all.
What was your relationship with property at the time? Like, did you want to buy a house?
I was renting a room. That's literally it. I mean, I was just renting a room in Catford. It felt like I'd fallen on hard times because I just left my previous company, wanted to try something new, and I just thought, you know what, let me give this a try. And like I said, I opened up the newspaper and it had in there an editorial saying negotiator, and I just looked at it and I thought, Samuel L. Jackson, here I come.
It's meant to be.
So it was meant to be kind of thing.
The rooftop.
Yeah, you know. So I thought I was going to be hostage negotiations and things like that, and it ended up being a real estate property estate agency kind of thing, and it was really good for me because I went into the branch and I kind of asked if I could speak to the manager. I was confident in myself and my ability, and I said, can I speak to the manager? They said the manager's not around. It was actually the area manager. She's on lunch at the moment. So when she came back, I had my CV there. We sat down, I showed her my CV, and she goes, you know, we went through the process, the interview process, and then about an hour or two later, she gave me a call and said, do you want to join?
Where does this confidence come from? I'm trying to place this. Like, was this something you learned in consumer psychology? You just walk into the branch and say, can I speak to the manager? Was this normal at the time you were doing it? Or where did this...
It wasn't normal, but what happened was I had been going through different companies. So I tried different estate agents because I started to, since I looked into the negotiator thing, I'd obviously gone to Hammersmith. I'd done an interview over there. It was successful. So I was like, right, okay. So that's where I got my confidence from. I was like, okay, now I know what kind of questions to ask, where to go and so forth. So then I started to go to other agents, dropping my CV and so forth. And those that called me back for interviews, I acquired more knowledge about the industry. So then my last interview, when I went to it and I got accepted in there, I actually knew exactly what I was navigating and what I was going to. So that made it a lot more easier, and I had a better confidence and structure there.
That's dope.
So that's what helped me.
So it was like a lot of trial and error, but
Yeah.
you were picking up along the way.
Yeah,
So you made up
absolutely.
your mind. You're going into property now,
Yeah.
and you're equipped to it. Okay.
Yeah.
So talk me about this first job. What's the first house you sold? How does this work? Like, you have no experience in this.
I had no experience. So the company that I actually joined, they had like 4 branches. So they had one in Lewisham, which was their head office. They had one in Brockley, one in Forest Hill, and one in Sevenoaks in Kent. And I actually got pulled into the sales department, which was in Brockley. So Brockley was my first area about selling. And when I got over there, I remember sitting down and I could see people coming in, and I never had, back then you never really got that much training.
Yeah.
Like one-to-one training, you just had to wing it and just make it happen kind of scenario. And you kind of learn on the job. So you had a manager who would just basically send you out on viewings and send you out with clients and things like that. So it was just full on. Yeah. There was no way of wiggling out and thinking, oh, let me start easy, let me ease. You were just thrown in the deep end. And which was really good for me, because that's how I kind of learned quickly and developed. So effectively, that's what happened. I was in Brockley. We had sales market. We had properties that we needed to sell. Clients would call in. You need to register them and make sure that they're, qualified, and they maybe have a mortgage or they don't have a mortgage and so forth, and then arrange a viewing. So I remember doing my first viewing, and actually I got an offer from it. But one of the things that was a bit disturbing for me was that with sales, it took around about 12 to 16 weeks for you to actually go through the sales process from beginning to end for them to complete. And I was like, at the time, it was just a sales office that was there. It didn't have rentals office. And we used to have people walk past the office and ask us, do you do rentals?
Yeah.
And we used to have to send them away and say, oh, no, we don't do rentals, go next door. But the other branches within the same company did rentals. So the Lewisham office did rentals, the Forest Hill office did rentals. But if people came to Brockley, we didn't do rentals, we solely did sales. So we were doing residential sales.
Just to slow you down quickly before we go into that, could you break down, I know what rental is, but if someone's listening and they're trying to discern what you're talking about, so you're saying you sell houses.
Yeah.
When you're saying rentals, you're meaning, do you want to explain to people?
Absolutely. So when you're selling a property, that means that you're effectively giving that person the right to buy a property and own the property. So the property no longer belongs to a landlord or no longer belongs to a tenant or so forth. It belongs to an individual who either can live in there or they can rent it out. It's up to them what they want to do with the property. Now, when you're renting a property, that means that you have potentially a landlord of an individual, a group, or a company that has a property that they own, and you go in there and you effectively pay rent on a monthly basis, on a 6-monthly basis, or 12-monthly basis, whatever the arrangement is. Yeah. And you have an assured short hold tenancy, which is called an AST for abbreviation. Oh. And that normally lasts between 6 to 12 months. Cool. So that's what happens. So once you have that agreement, you then start to pay rent as discussed, whether it's going to be on a monthly basis or a 6-month basis or a 12-month basis.
And that would be like how most students kind of have their accommodation, student accommodation.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And then you can go divulge into different sectors, like where you'd have a guarantor, for example. If you're a student, you don't have income, you then have a guarantor, which could be a mum, dad, brother, sister who's working full-time and can afford to help you pay your rent if you're not able to pay it. If you're not able to pay the rent and things like that. So effectively that's what happened. But most professionals in London rent. Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a bit. We'll get into that. Yeah. So you were saying the properties in Forest Hill and other companies, other branches of the companies, did rentals, but you didn't.
But Brockley didn't do it. They didn't have the facilities and the software to do it. And it's not like this currently now where you could get platforms. Back then you had to run the wires.
What do you mean?
Like cables. So you have to have like cables. So it was really dated. It's not like now where you get software, you could just load on a computer and then you kind of have the platform where you could use the same software and things like that. No, back then it was more analog kind of scenario. So they weren't really up on technology.
So where'd you run these wires into?
It's like telephone. I don't know, like now everyone uses mobile phones, right? But back then it was like landlines. Yeah. So you just pick up landline calls and you just call people up. You're not using mobile phones. There's no mobile phones back. Well, there were, but it was mostly for the city guys that were working in Canary Wharf, that were working in Bloomsburg and things like that had big mobile phones. But back then we were using landlines, which was connected to like a plug in the wall or something along those lines. And then you pick it up and make phone calls like that.
So you're just calling people trying
Yeah,
to okay.
trying to book in appointments, like the way you use mobile phone to arrange an appointment and things like that. It's the same way. But this wasn't something that you carried with you when you were leaving the house or you're leaving the office or something. This was stationary at your desk.
So you're there 24/7.
Yeah, you're there picking up the phone, making phone calls, calling and so forth. So that's how that worked.
So talk us through that first sale then.
So the first sale, I had a lady who, this was many years ago. I had a lady who came with her dad and she was looking for a property in Broccoli Rise. And she came in and we had a conversation, found a bit more about her background, what she was doing. And back then her parents were helping her to buy her first home.
Okay, so
she
it's
would
the
have
mortgage.
so she would have had a mortgage, but they were helping her with a deposit. So she got a good job and the parents were subsidizing her with the deposit. So it's like 10-15% deposit to buy a place. And she was buying a sort of like a period masonette. So a period property is mostly like Victorian houses
kind of old school,
or the Georgian houses and things like that. So she had one of those in Broccoli Rise. And so I took her to a few properties and she decided she's going to buy one on a road called Adelaide Road in Broccoli or something like that, if that's the name of the road. Yeah. And then so she decided to make an offer on it. That was my first sale.
Serious? How does the business work? Just because I'm curious. If anyone to real estate, I remember when we was getting our house, the real estate agent was good, but you can tell she wanted to make that sale. What's the percentages like that you guys?
Well, each company varies, but
for you back then?
Yeah, for back then, like commission-wise for the company would be 1 to 2% of the value of the property.
Really?
So so if the property was, say, for example, $1 million, you might get 1%, so that'd be what, 10,000 or so.
And
so
you as the individual agent, would you get a percentage of that?
And you get a percentage of that commission.
Cool.
Correct.
So how much would that?
It will vary. So what they did is that they did a threshold. So say for example you generated income up to maybe 50,000 income, then you maybe get sort of like 10% of that value.
Okay.
Then when you exceed over that, then you go up to 12%. Then when you exceed over that 100,000 and maybe you're banking more, then you might be able to go to 15%, 20% of anything that you bank over that.
Oh, okay.
So that's what happens within a space of 12 months or so.
Cool. So you was in this system, real estate, for 9 years?
10 years, the whole journey. So effectively, when I worked for the one in Lewisham, the company in Lewisham, I had a manager and I was there for about 2 years. And I remember thinking to myself, look, I've worked in this company now because I got moved around quite a bit. So from the sales department, while I was in sales in Broccoli, I then decided that we're missing a lot of opportunities for the rentals because people were coming in for rentals. And I was thinking, we're missing a lot of opportunities here. Why are we not using the rentals? Why are we sending them away? Because next door, 2 doors away, they had an estate agent, but they did both sales and rentals. So we would say to them, go there. And I was like, why are we missing opportunities like that? Why don't we also do the rental side of things? But they said, because of the analog software and things like that, the system, they couldn't do it from there. So then I decided to get relocated to the Lewisham office, which allowed you to do both sales and rentals. And so I got into rentals. And my manager at that time, when I moved from sales to rentals, decided that 2 years down the line, I said to her, look, I'm looking to move on. And she said, I've just handed my notice in. Would you like to come with me? And that's how I got into Andrews. So she moved to Andrews in Streatham. And I soon followed up after that. So I was headhunted from my current company and went over to Andrews and followed her over there. And that was good. That was really good experience. They had really good training and development over there. That's why I got a real understanding as to what the market was like and things like that for the sales and for the rentals.
Cool. So from this, let's fast forward from here. So this is a period of you work in Andrews, you go to another company, you're working. When do you begin your own venture and what is the catalyst for that?
I began my own venture when I went to Ghana, and I actually wanted to stay in Ghana. I worked for a real estate company in Ghana, and it was, they had like 200 acres of land over there. They were dealing with affordable housing. Yeah. So pretty much properties.
Can you explain what affordable housing is?
Sure, absolutely. So affordable housing is something that is not overly expensive, something that your average person or civil servant can afford to purchase on their salary. So properties that were valued for between $28,000.
Yeah.
Over there, they were working to maybe $100,000, for example. So if you're working as a police officer, if you're working as a fireman, if you're working as a nurse, if you're working as a teacher, these are things that you can afford to purchase for yourself over there. So that's what effectively affordable housing was for us in Ghana.
Yeah,
over
okay.
there. So that's what we're working on. And the company was really good. It was a soft landing for me because I've never been, I wasn't born in Ghana, I was born over here, but I went to Ghana when I was very young. Subsequently came back over to the UK when I was about 9. So I left here when I was about 4, went to Ghana when I was about 4, and then came back about 8, 9.
Yeah, I did a similar thing when I was younger. Yeah.
So that gave me a chance, and since then I hadn't gone back. And one of my friends who's a gospel singer was like, Trevor, you've got to go back. You've got to go back. This was in 2012. You've got to go back. Ghana is changing. Loads of things are happening. It's exciting time. You've got to go back, especially when you're working in property for so long.
Property,
You've got to be able to see what's going on in the market there. So I managed to convince the wife, and she was like, okay, cool, let's give it a try. And so we went over there for the first time, and I loved it. I fell in love with the country. I fell in love with the people again, and I was just like, yeah, this is it. So in 2014, I moved over there with the whole family. And then I worked for the company. I was the CEO, Chief Operating Officer over there.
Was that who did someone recruit you? You went there and applied for that job?
I went there. The same guy that was a gospel singer that was telling me about it kind of introduced me to this developer guy.
Okay then.
And from there, I kind of got on really, really well with the guy. And then from there, we just like got like a house on fire. And it was like, look, I've got a position for you if you want to come down, come and check it out, come and see what the deal was like over there. And I loved it when I went over there. So my whole family went over there, including our kids and that. Went to school over there, loved it.
So then what makes you come back here and start Trevlyn Properties? Well,
good question. So effectively what happened was my wife, she's a GP.
Okay.
And so she was doing a GP training, and so she hadn't finished her GP training. Also, we're having our third baby, my little girl. And so I was like, okay, then we've all got pretty much look to come back because she needed to finish off her training. So she was like, look, obviously I've been in Ghana with you now. I've got to try and finish off my thing at the moment. So is it okay, like, if we come back kind of thing? So that was the main catalyst for me to come back over here. When I came back over here, I worked with one of the guys that I used to work with in Andrews.
Oh, so all those years ago?
Yeah, all those years ago. I used to work with him, and he had set up a real estate company over here in Battersea. And so they were just basically like, look, since you're back, because we always said like one day we're going to have our own company and we're going to be able to do our own thing and go forward from there. So rather than work for the man. So it was one of those scenarios, and the company had set up, it was open and everything was with it. I thought, okay, cool, let me try it out. So tried it out for about 18 months or so. It was going really well. But then I got to the point where I was like in between two minds, whether to go back to Ghana, whether to stay over here and continue doing what we're doing or so forth. And the wife was like, look, you know, we're going to go to Ghana at one point, but why don't you just do your own thing? Because you've got all the skills, you've done everything yourself, so why don't you just do your own thing? And then that was the birth of Trevlyn Properties in 2018.
Oh, okay, cool. So you came back into another structure that was working, and you was building, and you had the necessary skills. So now it's like, so you just want to do your own thing because you want the freedom, or you just want...
Yeah, I think what it was, when I joined the company, there were different sections. So I went into investments, which I was predominantly targeted to deal with almost like high net worth individuals, and mostly was like footballers. What do you mean by investments for footballers? So for footballers, footballers that were looking to do buy to let properties. So buy to let is when you buy a property and then you rent it out, and then you take the rent as a profit, basically pay off your mortgage and your expenses, and then the profits come to you. So a lot of footballers, as you know, they have disposable income. So we were trying to structure something for them where they can buy the properties, rent it out, pay off the mortgage or however much they wish to do, and build up some residual income, because being footballer is not guaranteed that you're going to be able to earn substantial amount of money once you finish for the long term. So you're guaranteed your life, sort of like lifestyle and living expenses and so forth, probably about 10 years. So once that's done, how are you going to be able to earn 100 grand a week or 50 grand a week and so forth? So we said, look, we'll set up a vehicle for you guys. So when you finish your job, you're not going to just go out and just work in a chip shop or something like that. You know, you're going to be able to have a structure. You're going to be able to walk into an office where you've got things happening for you. And one of the ways to do that is to start investing in properties. And we were going to provide that platform where we'll be able to source properties for them. They'll be able to buy the properties, and then we'll rent it out for them. They'll get a rental coming into them, and they'll build up a portfolio of properties, so they still have that income even when they finish football. If it's 10 grand a week, 20 grand a week, they'll be able to have that sort of income coming in.
So is this a specific aspect of the property market? Or
it is.
Okay, so they do it in...
Yeah, so they do it for different people, but yeah, it does happen, yeah.
Cool. So then you moved from there to start your own company. So now where we're at. So startup, tell me, startup life, how does it start from the bottom to where you are now?
Well, because I had at that time, I probably had about 17, 18 years experience. So that meant I'd met a lot of landlords. Landlords are pretty much people who have properties that they rent out to individuals, whether it's a working professional, whether it's students and so forth. So I'd made a lot of contacts. Some of the landlords that we have maybe have 200 properties across London. So they would say to you, Trevor, would you like to rent out properties? Come available. Would you like to rent out the properties? And we did a lot of phone calls reaching out. So I initially started calling people up, saying to them, look, I've started my company. I really want to work with you. Would you mind giving me some of your properties to work with? And that's how we built it up. And then I'll go to events. So property events such as PIN meetings. So PIN meeting will be property investment networking. So they have it all across London. They have it in Kent and so forth, and Birmingham and Manchester. So in your local area, you can go there and you can meet different like-minded people. So somebody might be in architecture, someone might be into property management, some people might be into sales, residential sales, some people might be into commercials, some people might be solicitors and legals and things like that. So you get to meet a whole variety of different people in these kind of meetings, and then you'll be able to build up from there. And then you meet landlords as well, and you meet individuals that maybe want to buy or sell properties.
So what does it take to start a real estate business then? Like, what did you specifically need? Obviously, you had your experience and your skills.
Yeah.
But what would someone need to start one? If I'm talking about from like the capital, from like the team, from like the infrastructure. Would you need an office? How much do you think it will cost?
I think for us, we were slightly different in the way we started off. We started off online. We saw the market, because I'd worked in traditional estate agency where you were based in a local area. We kind of thought that isn't going to work no more, because we started to see a lot of people were doing a lot more searches for their properties, kind of like online. So they'll pick up their phones and they'll search properties in Zoopla, Rightmove or somewhere else online. They'll be at work and they'll be checking the messages and texts and so forth. So we started seeing that there's a drop from when I started of people walking into offices and into the branches on a weekend to people not really walking into the branches that much no more.
Yeah.
People were calling in a lot more. People were sending emails a lot more. So we saw the whole transition between the original way that people were operating to now the millennial way of where people were operating with phone calls and texts and emails and so forth. So we decided that we're going to do Trevlyn Properties different. We're not going to do it the same way. We're not going to be focused just on a local area, because a lot of agents were focused in that local area. For example, if you're in Holborn, you'd have an estate agent on the high street of Holborn and they would only focus on Holborn.
Yeah.
That was what a lot of traditional agents were doing. We were like, no, that can't be the way we're going to do things, because we looked at things like most of the big organizations that were doing really well, like Amazon.
Yeah.
You couldn't walk into their branch. We looked at Facebook. It's not something that you walk into the office or something along those lines. You looked at Google. These are, again, things that you just don't walk into a branch or an office or something like that. But they were operating online and operating very, very well, successful at it. So we were like, okay, then this is a concept that can potentially work for us. If we've had the market and we have the audience for it, it could really work for us. So that's where we started off, and that's how we effectively did it, with minimum capital.
So when you say minimal capital, how would you say that? Obviously, you don't have to divulge you, but the average person, what is minimal capital in this context?
Well, it depends, because you'd have to get a website.
Yeah, okay.
So it depends how much how good you want your website to be and so forth. Of course, you'll have to have costs for your phone calls and your marketing, so advertising and Rightmove, advertising on Zoopla, advertising on different portals and so forth. Obviously, you need to get in touch with certain vendors. Vendors are people that have properties that they want to sell.
Yeah.
So you'd also have to get in contact with them and market your products and so forth. So it could vary depending on which market you want to go into. You could go into thousands.
Yeah.
But we try to scale that back and try and be as slimline as possible by having a good website, by having good marketing, by getting Google reviews, good reviews as well. So that kind of helped us. And with the background of having a lot of contacts with the landlords, with the vendors and things like that, it made our journey a lot more smoother than most people would if they were to start off.
So when you say we, who was the original team then? When you started the company?
It was myself and my wife, actually. That's why you got Trevlyn.
Oh, okay. So your wife's name's Lynn.
Yeah,
oh,
Linda.
Oh, Linda. Oh, my wife's name's Linda as well.
Oh, really? Okay, cool. So that's what happened. So that's where the name came from.
Oh, so you like really hustled
yeah,
there. It's like
so
together. I know the feeling.
Yeah. So we had to start from the bottom. It was just a clean, plain slate, and we just had to start from there and just build it up.
So I'm a married man myself, yeah. So how do you explain that to your wife? Obviously, she wanted you to come over, but like, obviously, there's bills to pay. The other kids are on the way. How do you explain to her that okay, we're about to start this business from the bottom?
Well, the thing is, it was actually her inspiration that actually got me to start the company because we came over here, I was still itching to go back to Ghana.
Oh, okay.
And I think she probably felt that energy, like I want to go back. So she was like, look, you must just start something over here and I'll give you the support that you'll be able to need to be able to do it. So she's a GP, so she was just like, okay then, I needed some finances, how we're going to make this work. So it was real. She supported me probably for about 6-7 months through that process, obviously make things work. Financially, we had advertising to pay for, marketing to pay for, telephone bills to pay for, and things like that. And so she provided a lot of support through that process for us. And that's how that worked as a team.
Dope.
Yeah.
So when did you become a business? Like when did you make your first sale to be like, okay, cool, we're good? And how did that happen?
Wow. I think what happened, the quickest thing for us was that we had a lot of landlords.
Yeah.
So that was the rental side of things. So we're able to rent out properties quite quickly. So I think within the first week or so, we already hit the ground running. So the first week, we were able to put properties on the market, get phone calls coming in, answering phone calls, and that was really weird because now you're calling your own company name, And that was really, really hard, saying like, good morning, Trevlyn Properties, how can I help, and things like that. So that was very strange because I'd already worked for the man at that time, so it was very odd, but then soon enough you got used to it, and it felt really good when people started saying the name, and then you could get reviews and things like that, so slowly and surely started picking up. And so within the first week, actually, we got our first rental property, and then we built up from there, and then we started getting more referrals. And our business, if you go straight even to our website, is basically on referral basis. That's why we do our business on referral basis.
So in that context, did you need to be accredited or something to start renting out places? Because I'm asking in the context, could anyone, if they had the kind of like commitment and experience, start their own real estate agency with the same? You can. You can start it off, but you would need to be registered with people like ALA, which is the Association of Residential Lettings Agency. So they give you the guidelines as to what you can and can't do, and you have to do exams with them as well to get ALA one. It depends how quickly you do the studies. If you could do the studies within 3 months, 6 months, you could just take the exam. It's almost like A-level types of exams. Okay. So you can just go and do it and get that done. Then you have to register with certain bodies which want to make sure that you have the ability, you have the capability to be able to do it. So they'll ask about your experience, how long you've been in the industry for, what you've done and so forth. And so you get approved that way around as well. Okay, so a lot of these people I was speaking to, like specifically because of that, not having they was thinking about how do I get into the property market. So not necessarily in an official capacity, but in the way you're talking, how would they get into that rental space? I want to get places, rent it, and kind of like start a business around property, because essentially that's what you've done, except for your more experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So for someone who wants to get into the rental business, I would say to you, definitely go to a couple of seminars, or ideally work for a company, work for an agency that's already in the rental business, get an understanding as to what the legal terms are, what you can and can't do, get the goods of each company that you potentially could work for. So find a good company that you could potentially work for that's got good training structure within them. We also do trainings as well. So find a company that does training so you can get a better understanding and have a proper clear foundation.
So when you say you do trainings, what do you mean? Like, do you want to elaborate? So
absolutely. So for example, you need to understand the certain processes of why people want to rent a property. So how do you register somebody to make sure that you've got the right qualification, you qualify the person, you've got a full name, you've got an email address, you've got a telephone number, you find out exactly how much was their budget, what locations are they looking at and so forth. So you qualify those people, then you'll be able to then match them to the right property that they're looking for. So most of the time in the industry that we're in, people will call you or email you and let you know that, look, I'm interested in a property on Holborn High Street. It's on the market for 2,000. You then have the opportunity, because they want it, you then have the opportunity to register the details and make sure that you get all the details that's relevant for you to then arrange a viewing for them and go forward from there. So that's the beginning part. That's the reason why I say to you, you have to go through the training to understand what's necessary for you to be able to qualify yourself. and get that confidence and be able to deliver that.
So if someone came to you for training, would you be able to work them up to a level where they're ready to start?
Absolutely. That's exactly what we do with all our teams, with all the stuff that we've got at the moment. They all go through training, so they get to understand how to win a property, how to win a client over, how to deal with them, how to build a relationship, how to build a rapport, those kind of things. So that's what we do.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I was saying to you, I put this. I was interviewing you. I said we're having a conversation. I put that into the group chat, innit? So then all the conversations came about getting onto the property ladder.
Sure.
So obviously people can come to you and you'll sort them out.
Absolutely.
But actually, it would actually be good to let people know the kind of properties you deal with, because we know there's commercial, there's residential. But do you want to give them an idea of the kind of properties you deal with, the kind you've done with your company?
Sure. So Trevlyn Properties, predominantly we deal with properties starting from like £250,000 to buy, up to probably 20 million. And that covers from being in central London. We've got a few properties that we're selling over in this location in Holborn as well.
In Holborn, just out here.
Just out here, yeah.
You were showing them to me.
So the properties are ranging, especially over this area, you've got one bedrooms ranging from 1.2 million. And then we've got some in Covent Garden that will going up to 20 million, some in Mayfair, some properties that are not even on our website. They're very exclusive. Some of the clients don't really want it to be exposed, that they're on the market. But if you're interested and you're serious buyers and things like that, then we could get you a viewing in the properties and things like that. But you have to be qualified and so forth. So that's how effectively we work. To Canary Wharf. So we cover pretty much within the M25 area of London. And that's why I was saying to you that we're not just your local agent. We cover quite a wide range of areas.
So let's talk about getting onto the property market, because I think it's something a lot of young people are interested in, and especially a lot of young people who may not come from necessarily economically stable backgrounds. You know what I mean? So how does someone start this? Say someone's working maybe an average job and they're thinking, I want to get onto the property market. What would be your advice to them, and how do they get into that journey?
I would definitely. I'd like to encourage, especially young people, to try and get onto the property ladder as soon as possible, and don't always focus about being in London, because London is a very expensive area. I mean, I was born and raised pretty much in London all my life, but I don't live in London now. I live outside of London. So don't be threatened about living outside of London and things like that. I think it's quite good. Financially might end up better for you to be able to get on a property ladder. London is quite an expensive area, so I'd say to you, consider other areas outside of London. That you can commute back into London with. That would help you, because house prices would be a lot cheaper for you to be able to get on a property ladder. But also you need to speak to brokers, which are mortgage brokers, and we can refer you to mortgage brokers. They will be able to take into account your salary, and obviously see your expenses as well, and be able to work out what kind of mortgage affordability you can have. There are also things like first-time buyer schemes or help-to-buy schemes that will be able to allow you to get onto the property ladder. Like in London, for example, if you've got a decent job, but you don't have a good deposit, a huge deposit, the help-to-buy scheme allows you to use 5% deposit up to 600,000. So you could buy a brand new property, up to 600,000 based on a 5% deposit, because the government gives you the other part of the deposit as equity, and you have it for like 5 years at interest-free. And then thereafter, you'd either sell the property or remortgage it, and then hopefully that time your situation has changed, and maybe you can buy a bit more of the property out.
So when you're talking about people looking outside of London, say if you're young, you want to get on a property ladder, and you wanted to have areas outside of London where you could still live at your parents' home, rent, and make it an investment. What areas would you recommend?
There's quite a few areas, but the most prominent ones that do come to mind is places like Manchester, places like Liverpool, places like Birmingham, Wirral. Those kind of areas, they're cheaper than they are in London. And you can get more value for money over those kind of areas, and they also give you higher yields. Now, yields are effectively the cost of the property, and then you divide it by the yearly rental that you get. And then you divide it, and that will give you roughly what a percentage of yield you'll get. So that might be 10% yield, or 20% yield, or 15%, but these are high yields. On average, in London, you're probably looking between 3 to 4% yields. But in these outside areas, you'd be looking at anything between 7+ yields. So that will give you a good return on your investment.
So, and when we're talking about return on investment as well, could you break down to people, because I realized even when I bought my house, the concept of like mortgage, like down to the basics and how it works, because people think, okay, I'm gonna buy a house and then I'm gonna rent it out, and every month someone's paying me money, I'm not paying anyone else, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They don't understand that.
Okay, fine. So, unless you're being a cash buyer, so a cash buyer is someone effectively, if you have a property that's worth 100,000, for example, and I have a cash of 100,000, that means that when I buy that property, I don't really owe anyone any money because that's been bought out for where it is. Majority of people can't afford to have that kind of money, so what they need to do is take a mortgage. Now, mortgage is effectively the bank lending you money towards the purchase of a property. So they have the criteria that you would need as an individual, as a group, would need to be able to fulfill. So that criteria could be the fact that you got a stable job, the amount that you need to borrow needs to be maybe 100 grand. So you might need to be on 20 grand or 25 grand per annum as a basic income, because they'll do multiples of 4 or 5 times your multiples to be able to afford to give it to you. They might also ask you to be able to provide at least 5 to 10% deposit if you're a first time buyer, for example. So that's what would be able to help you. Now, once you've bought the property and a mortgage company is giving you that maybe 80% loan to value, which is basically, if the property is 100,000, they're lending you 90,000. So your deposit would be 10,000, for example. So when they do something like that for you, that means that you still have to pay a mortgage of the 90,000, and that could be equivalent to maybe £300 a month that you have to pay Barclays, or you might have to pay Santander, or you might have to pay Lloyds each month from the property that you've just purchased. Yeah? And that could be over a duration of maybe 20 years or 25 years or 30 years and so forth. And they will add their own interest to it as well. So that's what you would pay. In return, if you decided you were renting it, you might want to rent a property that you're paying £300 for. You might want to rent it out for £600, if that's what the market value is, if you've done your calculations properly. So that means effectively you're going to be making £300 profit. Yes. So that's where that would engage, and that'll make the difference for you. So each month you get £300. You might have to obviously make sure you put some money away for maintenance. If you get electrical problems, someone's got to look after it and someone's got to pay for that. If the gas boiler's not working, someone's got to look after it and pay for it. And then you've got to pay for things like gas safe and make sure the electricals are running and things like that. So those are just little bits of money. So you might want to put £100 away each month, for example, for those kind of expenses, and then
to kind of maintain you, because as the landlord. So is it controversial to say, and I want to say this, is it controversial to say then you don't actually own the house then? Because I read somewhere where someone says you own the loan but you don't own the house, which I thought was funny. And I think it's a good distinction to make.
Absolutely. So as long as you haven't bought it all out, you don't own the house fully. No, you don't. But the benefit of that though is financially you're seen in the financial world as someone who's stable. Someone that you can go out and be able to get a business loan, someone that is credible, someone that can fulfill credit, because credit is a major issue for a lot of young people, especially if you're not paying your mobile phone bills, you're not paying your electric bills. These things are credit that goes against you. So you need to make sure your credit is good. The better your credit is, the better sort of mortgage products you can get. So what that means is, if the market is saying that interest rate at this moment in time on average is about 2% on average on your mortgage, and your credit isn't good, you might have to pay 4 to 5%. Okay, which then means that someone who's supposed to pay £300 for the mortgage is now paying £400 or £500 for the mortgage. But you're still getting £600 rent. So that's kind of depleted the £300 that initially you thought you were going to be earning. You're now only earning £100, and then you got to put that away for the rainy day kind of scenario. So you're breaking even. So it makes no financial sense for you. But what can really work in your favor in that sense, because there's almost like 3 parts to property and investment, and we'll probably touch on that at some point. Property and investment is 2 different aspects. So there's a buy-to-let side of things where you look at the yield. So this is what you get on a monthly basis returned back. So when you pay your mortgage and you get £300 back, that's a yield. You're getting a percentage of yield back, so you can benefit from that. Then there's capital growth. So the capital growth looks at how much appreciation your property is from when you bought it to maybe the end of next year. So 12 months down the line, how much is it appreciated by? So if I bought it for 100,000, a year down the line, has it gone up by 102,000? Has it gone up by 105,000? So is your property now worth £2,000 more or £5,000 more because that's what you've made on it. So if the area is good, there's a lot of things coming into the area, activities, life, trains, transport, work, jobs, and it starts appreciating. A lot more people start moving into the area. That means that the value of your property will appreciate. So where you bought it for 100,000 is now a year down the line is now maybe potentially 120,000 in a year.
So when it's worth, sorry, I want to stop you there because I think there's a big confusion. I think people often throw around like, oh, I bought it for this much, now it's worth this much. So how would someone see that 20,000? Could you explain the process of how, if they wanted to see that 20,000 value, what would it be? They'd have to...
Okay, so effectively, if you want to see the value of that, you need to put it on the market.
Yeah.
So you need to get an estate agent, someone like myself also.
Definitely yourself. They will come to you, bro.
Who would come to me and say to me, look, can you value my property for me? We'll give you a valuation. And then you potentially, if you wanted to take that money out, you couldn't take it all out. Because remember, the bank gave you 90%.
Yes.
Okay? So then you would need to be able to have, the bank would then send their valuers to make sure that what I've quoted is roughly the same ballpark figure. And they will do a loan to value. So they might say to you, okay, then what we can lend you is between 75% of the value of the property. So you can only get effectively 25% of it. Does that make sense?
No.
Okay. So if the property is worth 100 grand, and it's been valued at 120 grand, the bank may say to you, we've already lent you 90% towards it.
Yeah.
So you are owing us 90 grand.
Yes.
Right? But now you've appreciated by 30 grand. So what we're going to do is, rather than give you the whole 30 grand, we're probably just going to give you 10 grand. Because you still owe us money. So there's enough equity in there for us to be able to sell the property. And if the property if it down values, then we're still good.
Yeah.
Yeah?
No,
so they're protecting their own interest.
No, this is perfect because I think for the Instagram generation, it's always, I've bought a house, my house is worth this much, you know what I mean? But there's never any of this kind of detail into how this actually works, you know what I mean?
So how it translates is that if you want it to be hard cash, you're not going to get the extra 20 grand. They're not going to give it to you because they want to protect their interest. So their interest is, we'll offset it, maybe we'll give you 10 grand out of the 30 grand that you owe, for example. Yeah. So they'll get their valuers to come around and value it for you. And then what happens is that 10 grand or 20 grand that they're given to you, they add onto the rest of the loan. Yeah. So now rather than you owing 90 grand, you owe them 100 grand. Yeah. Yeah? Yeah. But then the property is now 120 grand, so you're still better off because it's appreciated.
Yeah, because there's more value.
Absolutely. But one of the best things is that you want to obviously pay off the capital as quickly as possible as well. Yeah. And then that gives you more leverage. So where they're 90 grand, lend you 90 grand, if you're paying off the capital, then it could be a year or two down the line, then the property value would appreciate it to 120 grand, but then the loan that you owe them may also get reduced to 85 grand. Yeah. Because you're paying off the capital.
Yes.
So you have more leverage in between it.
Cool. So now we're talking about like property as an investment, and I think there's a lot of rhetoric around it. So I watch this guy online. I don't really watch him, but he always comes up and he always says, don't ever buy a house. You know what I mean? Don't ever buy a house. And I think there's lots of different opinions, but he says because buying a house to rent is a good investment. But he says buying a house to live in it is kind of like you're not getting money off that investment. What's your stance on something like that?
I think it all depends on what stage of your life you're in. I think when you're young, I think if I could do this again, I'll probably buy properties as quickly as possible to be able to rent them out. So when I'm, ready to settle down, get married and all that kind of stuff and have kids and all that, I don't need to start stressing about where job is going to be, where work is going to be, where I'm going to get employment. I'll be able to sit down and get this residual income coming in. Yes. But there are tax implications to this as well, that you also need to make sure you get tax people to obviously look into your financial affairs and that. But that's what effectively I would like to do if I could have done it that way round. Because it gives you peace of mind. You're able to spend quality time with your family. You're able to do the kind of job that you want to do. You don't feel under duress. You've still got money coming in, so you can go on holidays and do all the things that you really want to do, right? And actually enjoy life and, live and not just work to live kind of thing, So that's what I would say to you. But going back to your question about whether it's worthwhile buying a house and then obviously living in it, it's not generating any income. These days, a lot of people use things called HMO, which is house of multiple occupants. So if you have a house, a big house, and you've got 3 or 4 rooms available, you could potentially rent those rooms out to individuals that potentially like the location where you are, and if it's going to be £400 a room, you're going to make £800.
Yes.
Right? So that's income for you. So you can make money wherever possible.
Yeah.
It's whether you're willing to allow people to encroach kind of your environment or your space and that sort of thing. But if your house is big enough, why not rent a couple of rooms?
We do it in uni anyway. Most
Absolutely,
people do it in uni. You've done it already, so
why not? You know, and a lot of people in London are doing that now.
Yeah.
Obviously, because of COVID situation and things like that, people are a bit more reluctant about moving into new accommodations with others and things like that, so they're a bit more protective. But housing multiple occupants, it's something that has been up and coming, and is a lot of people do a lot of business from it, where they don't even own the property. They kind of rent a property off from the landlord, and then they kind of put people in there and make more money from it. So
someone is renting a house. This is okay. This is like Airbnb in a way, but you're renting a house, but then you're renting out the rooms within the house.
Absolutely. So you might turn around and say, look, I've got this 4-bedroom property that I want to rent out from the landlord. So the landlord said, I want £1,000 for it. You say, all right, Mr. Landlord, here's £1,000. Take the property. You take the property. I'll manage it. Any issues with it, I'll deal with it.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's your £1,000 each month. And then you go about, you rent out each room, and you're making £1,500.
Yes.
So you give your landlord £1,000, you're making £500 on top.
It's an investment. I like this. So.
Oh yeah, I had a question.
Yeah, cool.
That. Wouldn't that class as like subletting?
It would be subletting. So
let me ask you. So it becomes a thing. So wouldn't that? I'm gonna say exactly what you're saying. So, but would it? So if we're talking about that, wouldn't that class as subletting then? In that?
It would be classed as subletting, but this is where you have individuals that have created businesses where they actually inform the landlord that, look, I can guarantee your rental, and I'll take your property on and I'll deal with it. So as long as you're happy for me to do it the way I do it, which is I'm looking for, you know, to rent it out as a HMO and things like that, because some areas you have to get licensing. So you have to get permission and things like that. So as long as the landlord is aware that this is what you want to do, because remember, you're negotiating with the landlord directly. And if the landlord is happy with £1,000 rent, because that's what the expectations are, and you're given that, and you're saying, I'm going to look after your property as well, and you can sublet it, what's the problem with that? And they're aware of it, because you're going to be taking the responsibility. If there's any issues in the property, it's you who's renting it out that's going to be liable for it.
I was actually listening to a woman, and she actually Airbnb's her business. She rents out multiple in that same vein, but that was the whole thing. She said she'd approach the landlord and say, "This is how I kind of manage it."
This is my model of business.
I suppose if you're renting the business, there's a lot more transparency than Airbnb in that context.
Absolutely,
because you're willing to take responsibility.
You take the responsibilities. You have a management team. So if the shower's broken, you send in a plumber which works for your company or works for you. If electricals are faulty, you make sure that you send your electrician in, because if the tenants don't pay the rent, you still have to pay the landlord the rent.
Yeah, you still have to pay him his
money.
You
still have to pay his rent, and that's the agreement that you've had. So, and people don't want to have a bad name, because they want to be able to get referred to other landlords, because birds of a feather flock together. So if I'm a landlord and you've been a tenant of mine, and you're doing a good job, and I'm getting my rent, and I come to visit and inspect my property 6 months down the line, and it looks good, then and I have my colleague Sam, or my friend Sam, who's also got similar property, and he's got it empty, I'll be like, look, Sam, why don't you just speak to Suli and see whether Suli could help you out, and then you've got another landlord.
So is this something you train people to do as well? Is it something? I mean, not train, but if I approach you and saying, listen, I want to get onto the property market, and I don't necessarily have the money to buy a house, but I don't mind paying rent to rent it out. Is that something that you could help people with as well?
I can put you in the right direction.
Okay, cool.
I could definitely put you in the right direction, because we have associates that specialise in those kind of things. What we do, we deal with the single lets. So we would effectively take the whole unit and we'll rent out to an individual or to a family, for example. We don't do the individual room lets where you get one person, like you might have yourself, you might have Christina, you might have Sam, who will come in from different backgrounds and so forth, and kind of mesh you guys and say, okay, then you've got communal kitchen, you've got 2 bathrooms, enjoy yourselves, right? This is your room, this is your keys, go on about your business and things like that. So we don't really do that personally ourselves, but it is a huge market, and a lot of people are benefiting from it because it works. But we just find that at this current moment that it's not ideal for us. That's all.
Yeah.
But we definitely have people. Yeah, we have teams that specialize in that.
So if I'm maybe like, I think this is a big theme around the people. If we're people I know between 25 to like 32, they're like, I want to buy my first house. But I think a lot of people want to buy it because that's the social kind of like thing, you know what I mean? So if I was one of those people and I came to you and said I want to buy my first house, but I want to buy it as an investment. How would that process work? Because I think Help to Buy is a great opportunity. And like you said, if you were younger, you would do it differently. My fear is that I don't want a lot of people wasting that opportunity by just wanting to like not really know how they want to get into the market.
Okay, so your question is, how would you use Help to Buy to assist you better?
So if I was like a young person and it's like, this is my first house, but I know that whether I'm going to live in it or not, I want this property to be an investment. Would you say buy it out of London, buy it in London? What would be the exact direct kind of like guidance? I'll give you a case study. One of my, I'll say she's my sister, Hillary. You know, she's been living at home her whole since she was young. She's just turned 25. I want to move out of my house. I want a house. You know, she comes to you as an estate agent. What's your advice to her as someone who cares about her long-term future?
Wow. Okay. So I think that this. At first, we're not advisors in that kind of capacity, okay? So I just want to clarify that. But what we would be able to say is identify her actual needs. So number one, what was the long-term and short-term goals? Is she looking to work in London? So if you're looking to work in London, do you need to have the property in London? And if you do need to have the property in London, do you have the budget for a property in London? And these are kind of questions that you need to identify, because that would quickly let you know whether you can afford to be in London or you can afford to be outside of London.
And when you say budget, is budget in context of like how long do you plan on working in this job and how stable is it?
Not necessarily. When we say budget, we're talking about your affordability. So we're talking about you having to sit down with a broker and a broker looking at your finances and saying to you, well, your income is 25k. You can effectively 4 times that if you're looking at, 100k or 85k, for example. That's what you can afford. That's how much affordability you can go for. So any properties up to 100k is what you can buy. Now, pretty soon enough, you know that you can't buy that in London, right? So then you got to look at other areas outside of London. So then your question is, what areas can I buy in? Or does that mean that I need to wait for my salary to shoot up? Does that mean that I have to wait to get more deposit? Because the more deposit I can get, probably the higher that, So that 100k will probably go up to 100. If you could get 40 grand deposit, that means that you can buy something up to 140 grand, right? So that's what you might want to look at and see. But
So in that first house as well, when you're guiding people towards their first. I'm putting you on the spot. Don't worry, man. But it's all good. I think this is answers that people need anyway, man.
That's fine.
So when people are buying that first property and you're working and I'm working with you, would you advise the first property to be one that you're going to live in long term? Should this, in your opinion, or should it just be like during this period of my life?
I think again, it depends what stage of your life you're in. I think for most young people, I say sort of like early to mid 20s. If you're going to buy a property, it's definitely not going to be the place that you're going to be in forever, generally speaking. And the reason why I'm saying that is because you're probably single, you've got a partner, you're probably living in separate houses at that time, okay? So you're probably going to have a 1-bedroom apartment. 10 years down the line, you move with your partner, you're going to outgrow that 1 bed anyway. And then after that, you're probably going to need more space, which means that you're going to probably be expecting to have kids and that sort of thing. So that means that you're going to need a bigger house anyway. So I'll just say to you, you can start off small, just to enter the property market with a 1 bed for yourself, get an idea as to how to manage and how to maintain it, and things like that. And then you can, obviously with the capital growth that we spoke about, you can either sell it, take the money out, and then go and buy maybe a 2-bedroom, or if you get married and so forth, you jump in with your partner and then buy a bigger house and so forth, and then build up from there. So you could potentially do that, but it all depends on your personal circumstances, I would say.
And your company can help with that one first house, right?
Oh yeah, we can always
single rooms, but you can help with
we
one.
can help. Absolutely. We can always help with the purchasing and where your budget is and things like that. We could always look down, and if we can't help you at that point, we could obviously refer you to someone that can. So it's not a case where you're not going to be able to get helped or something along those lines.
Cool. And just because you're a fellow Ghanaian, you're a fellow like West African, you're a black man as well. What is our communities? You know what I mean? What are we kind of lacking in terms of like getting onto the property ladder when you've worked with because you work one of the reasons I have you is because you worked with a lot of people from our demographics. What is the stumbling blocks at this moment?
I think one of the major stumbling blocks that we tend to see within our community is lack of structure. I think we're not really up on things like credit. That credit really has a major impact. So if you don't pay your bills on time, that really has a major impact on you.
Because most people, sorry to cut you off, but I think it's true. I used to do this. As soon as your phone bill was due, it was like, okay, I have time to get a new SIM. Well, as soon as you went over your phone bill, I get a new SIM. That one's done. You know what I mean? So you're jumping from phone network to network. That's normal. I know so many people that do that.
And that's not good. There's no other way for me to say it, but it's not good. Because what happens is that you get a credit report, and any lender that's looking to lend to you will look at your credit report. And if you've got ticks against your name saying that you got outstanding balance, or you got CCJ, which is a counter court judgment against your name, and so forth, it really devalues you as an asset for the company. It kind of puts you in a position where they don't really value what you can bring to the table, even if you've got loads of money, because they see you as a liability. Because
I think that's what we're good at doing. We're good at generating money, what you do, but like you said, the credit issue is...
The credit issue is a major issue. So you need to be able to build up credit, and that means that you're able to take a credit card out. You might spend 100 quid. Make sure you pay up the 100 quid within a time frame. Spend 200 quid. Make sure you pay up the 200 quid within a time frame. If you're going to do a car loan, don't just use the car loan and then not pay it off and things like that, because these things have an impact, and it builds a picture, a profile of what kind of person you are in regards to paying things back. So you need to make sure you're ahead of that. You're paying, when you borrow money, you pay it back, because this builds up your credit, builds up trust. And that's with anybody, not just with the bank. If you borrowed money from your friend and, you say you're going to pay you on Tuesday, and then they come to ask you for the money, and you're like, no, I didn't say that. Do you know what I mean? Soon you're going to be like, I know not to give Tommy no money no more, So that really works. But this is a lot more serious, because it has an impact, and once you start to join financially with somebody else, it has a financial impact on them as well. So if their credit is good and yours is bad, and you have a joint association, say for example you went in for a loan with that person, you become associate. And that means that your credit now is impacted by the other individual. Whether good or bad.
I totally understand. My wife, when we was gonna get the house, my wife was like to me, so I've never had a credit card. I slip through the cracks in it. But I don't. The thing about me is I pay all these bills because they come out of my account. You know what I mean? That's the only way. She was dreading to look at my credit in it. She was like, and when she saw it, she was like, "Oh, your credit's actually better than mine." You know what I'm saying? But that's just because all these stuff come out of my account. And they do it consistently. Do you know what I'm saying?
So that's one of the best ways to obviously do it. So you could do a standing order. And pay off your bills that way around. And if there is an irregularity within your standing order and someone's taking more money than they ought to, then you can look at it, you can review your bank. I'll say to people really do need to have financial literacy to be able to sit down every month, review your accounts, review what comes out of your bank account, even because everyone has access to their phone, right? And everyone has a mobile app. So I think one of the best things to do is just go through it, maybe once a week. Just flick through it. I paid for that, paid for that, paid for that. Oh, actually, what is this? I didn't pay for that. Find out. Give the people a call. Maybe it's money that you're owed back. Maybe it's something that got taken out by accident. Maybe another company that ages ago you registered with them didn't take the money out, and now they're taking it out.
That's me. That's all over.
Then now there's an opportunity for you to be able to be like, do you know what? God, thank you so much. I needed this money, and this company now needs to pay me this money back so I can follow it up. So it's good for you to have a financial literacy. I'll say to you to be able to check over your finances, just to review it. That way, it keeps you ahead of where you need to be.
So what are you checking for? Because I think these are two important things you touched on. Credit, we don't value credit. Credit is basically, you're saying, is trust. It's showing that financially I can trust you. And the second is having that financial discipline to check over your thing. So let's look in the context that a lot of people are not earning enough money. Like a lot of people like minimum wage. So they don't even. I remember I didn't even want to look at my bank statement. I think for 3 years when I was working, I think my account started in overdraft. It was
Yeah.
minus 600 for years, to the point where I was when I was calculating my money in the overdraft. So
Yeah.
I've got this much minus, you know what I mean? So
I think everyone did that. When I was at uni, it was the same thing, you know, and student loan kind of helped to get you over there, and it was still a debt, but you were excited about it, you know, but that's life. I think everyone goes through that point, but I think the difference is other groups or other communities understand the benefits of credit. I think within our community, we don't really get taught about the credit and the impact that it has on you long-term wise. So once you get out of the university stage and things like that, you see your peers who are going into the same job as you, but now they bought a property. And you're like, whoa, I'm still renting, or I'm still living in mum's house because I've still got to contribute to this, I've still got to contribute to that. If I can't afford it, I can't afford it kind of scenario, and just leave it at day. I think one of my main motivation personally for me was when I was working in an estate agency, I was seeing postgrads that were working for companies like PwC, KPMG, Ernest Young and so forth. And they were like 22, 23. They were coming in and buying properties for just under $500,000. With their parents being guarantors and that sort of thing. Now, within our community, we don't really have the luxury of those kind of things. You know, we're normally finished uni and you start your new job and the mum's like, yo, you got to help me out with the rent.
Yeah, that's already...
You know, you got to do the shopping, you got to do this, you got to do that. Whereas other communities, they don't have that pressure to be able to be doing that so earlier on. And so it gives them that flexibility to be able to spread their wings, be able to buy a property, invite their friends, come and rent one of the rooms. They carry on building. By the time they finish or get into their late 20s, they've got a partner, they're then able to sell that property or kick out their friend or something like that, and then their partner comes and joins them, and it's double income now. You know, and then they're able to flourish, and then you see it, you know, but I went to uni with this guy, like, how come he's like 10 steps ahead of me now? And you're kind of guessing and trying to work it out and be like, nah, you're getting paid more than me and I'm in the same company as me. Or it doesn't matter whether you're getting paid more than the person. The fact is, the value that you place on your positioning, it's a game of chess. You got to know what is going to be vital for you. So you got to build up first before you can start to help out other people. And you've got to make that clear. And I think sometimes in our community, it's very hard for us to be able to communicate that, especially to our elders and especially to our parents, to let them know that, look, at this moment in time, this is what my plan is. Like, you got to sit down with them and actually speak to them and let them know that, like, Pops, when I earn this money, it's not just for me to go down and buy like Gucci's and all that kind of stuff, It's for me to actually try and get on the property ladder, and the reason why is because I can see this and this is what's gonna help us. You know, if you want me to put my name down on this house, then we've got to make sure that the bills are paid on time those kind of things, you know. Because you also get roped into put your name down on the house because now you're earning, so we could take more money out. But when you're taking the money out, I need to know what you're going to be doing with that money and how that's going to be beneficial.
Actually, I think that's a good thing you touched on, because I know a lot of people that have been in a situation where their parents said, "Can you put your name on this house?" Or even like maybe a sibling. "Oh, your sibling wants to get this house. They need someone. Can you put your name on it?" What are the implications of that?
Well, it goes back to credit. It goes back to the trust thing. Because you end up, you know, your sibling putting it there, but if your sibling ain't been paying a mobile bill for the last 3 years, 4 years, and now you want them to pay 10 times the amount on a mortgage, it's not realistic. You know, they'll call you up and be like, "Oh, sis, you know, I'm really sorry about this, but I didn't pay the mortgage. Can you cover me?" And you're like, "I'm living over here, covering this cost, and you want me to cover this cost. How am I going to do it?" And then that puts both of you, remember we talked about financially linked? That then puts both of you under financial duress, and your credit file starts to go bad. And so now you've kind of forgotten all about it, you're living your life, you're married or whatever, and then you go to apply for credit, maybe for a new car, maybe for a new kitchen, maybe for something new, and they're like, "I'm really sorry, we can't give it to you." And you're like, "What do you mean? I'm earning X amount of money," but like, your credit is not good. Only to find out is because of this past history.
How does student loan affect your credit? Because me and Jay were talking about it actually before you guys got here.
Student loan, they agreed that they weren't going to add it onto your credit file. So it's one of those kind of loans that they spoke about, because I still got a loan outstanding.
I think all of us are dodging the thing.
Some of us are just hoping they'll just cancel it, forget about it.
Let me not say anything on this, you know what I mean? So,
but the truth is you've got to pay it. So pay your student loan off as soon as you can. But I'll say there's a lot more pressing things for a lot of students these days. And I think accommodation is a really serious part of student accommodation and things like that. It's really key stuff.
Cool. So just before we start to wrap up, if we got just more property advice. So someone like me, maybe if you own a property, and I actually bought this book, Property for Dummies, because I want to look into getting into more properties and stuff. Because I have a friend, my friend Mike, he's got like 4 properties. I said he's playing Monopoly. You know what I mean? Like, he's got.
That's good. That's really good. That's great.
He's doing very well, man. So if you're a friend, and I have another friend who also he has a property, he wants to get another one, and he was looking at the possibilities of going into commercial real estate versus residential, and what are the pros and cons? Obviously you don't do commercial, but what are the pros and cons of going into like commercial versus residential, and what would you personally feel advise someone like that?
Okay, so first of all, what is his purpose for going into commercial?
I think it's an investment. He has his second house because he wanted it as investment, but he's having a lot of stress with residential. You know what I mean? Dealing with tenants all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so is he buying a commercial on the basis that he's going to put like Starbucks into it, or is going to put Boots into it?
I believe so, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, well the commercial basis of things is that you're more guaranteed because you're putting companies in there, so the companies don't want to really default.
What about like hairdressers? Maybe even to put a barbershop in there.
That's tricky because that thing is seasonal. So, for example, we had COVID. Nowadays, when you do a business, you've got to be COVID proof, right? Because when no one is coming to get a haircut and people are starting to do their nails, nail shops are closed, pedicures and manicures are being done at home, and they're not coming to the shops, how are you going to function if that's your business? People wearing, face masks and all that kind of stuff. So you got to be COVID proof. So you got to be quite aware of those kind of things. Also, the high street's having a hit. Big time. I mean, we're just walking up here. TM Lewin is closed. Debenhams is closed. House of Fraser is closed. These are all companies that are on the high street that were going into administration. So you've got to be careful of what kind of market you're going into. So I think if you're doing commercial, you've got to be aware of what kind of commercial you're doing and what's going to be. If it's a coffee shop, because coffee is kind of fancy and people like those kind of things, but it's one of those trendy things. You don't know how long it's going to last for before it closes down. Cafe Nero used to be a big thing. Now it's no longer a big thing. Costa is a big thing. You got other sort of like Starbucks and things like that. These are things that have trends. So you got to look at it and see how that's going to work. But when you think about businesses and things like that, you look at Amazon, you look at Google, you look at these are things that are really kicking up. Yeah, absolutely. These are all online stuff. So you've got to look at what things can work for you. So on the commercial side of things, definitely try and get an understanding as to what kind of business they want to put in there and how that's going to work for them. I had a landlord who I speaking to just literally before I got here, and he's got a property where a big high street company was renting out his place, and they haven't paid a rent, and they owe him like 30 grand.
Yeah.
For the last 5 months.
Yeah, and you can't. Yeah.
You can't
so take money that's not there in it. Yeah.
And they're still using the premises or whatever the case is. So 30 grand to him might not be nothing, but to someone like this is your only bread and butter. That's life or death.
Yeah.
You're gonna be standing out there with lock keys and battens or whatever. But you can't do that. You gotta go through the legitimate paths and try and get possession. And right now, possessions has been extended and all that kind of stuff. So what do you do? Yeah. So I think it's something that you've got to have the full information and have the full facts before you delve into it. But some people are getting commercial and potentially converting it into residential, which is also another way to obviously build up your portfolio and things like that. So you've got to really know what you're doing and go from there. But risk is a good factor as well. You've got to be in a position to take risk, but calculated risk, I'd say.
Speaking of risk, before we wrap up, this was really important because I think people need to understand how you got to where you was, and it wasn't easy. So I want to know what was the biggest adversity that you faced, and what do you think made you successful? And what is the trait that you feel made you successful?
I think, thank you for asking that, because that's really tricky to answer because there's a lot of different factors. But I think it goes back to the beginning where you have to have tenacity. I was going knocking door to door for companies and trying to find out, can I speak to the manager? Can I speak to the area manager? So these are the kind of traits that you have to knock on doors, I don't want to go biblically, but,
No, go, bro, preach,
do you know what I mean?
Preach, bro, it's in the spirit, man.
Do you know what I mean? But it's one of those things where they say, you should knock the doors, how many times are you going to knock the door and kind of thing, ask for things and so forth. So I think those are the kind of things that we need to do more of. I think we need to be, if you get rejected, don't take it personally. Everybody gets rejected, you know, and I think a lot of people take it personally that, you know, is it because of this, is it because of that, is it because of this, but actually trying to understand why you got rejected, I think is one of the key questions, because a lot of the earlier parts when I was doing my interviewings and I was going through the negotiate kind of job roles and things like that, I got knocked back loads of times before I got accepted for that job, where they called me back in 2 hours. Before then, I couldn't tell you how many times I got rejected. But each time I got rejected, it was a way for me to kind of identify, okay, then what were the questions that I asked this time? Or what are the questions that they asked me that I wasn't prepared for, to then build it up. So when I had an opportunity to be able to then demonstrate that kind of thing, it was a lot easier for me to then come across professionally and be able to deal with it, because I'd already been going through the process and being rejected and understanding why I got rejected at that point. Call back and ask for feedback. I think that's one of the main things that we don't really tend to do that often. Yeah. When you get rejected, you don't want to ask them for feedback.
Well,
you're like, no, you're
done.
You know, you're done. Yeah, you don't want to see them again. But the fact is, in the social digital world, you're going to see people. And you're going to come across people, because in the digital world, you know, you could be in your room, you could be in your bathroom, and you see that person's face, you know, and you can't just run away from it. So I think one of the good things that people can do is, even if it's your own job and you know, you've been made redundant or you've lost your job and you've been, you know, you want to find out, why did I get selected? I think it's fair to speak to your manager and find out. Maybe you weren't turning up on time. You know, out of all the people that they looked at, you were the only person that always turned up at 9:30, and the meetings were starting at 9 o'clock. That could be a major factor, you know. Maybe you just weren't dressing or feeling the part when people were progressing and going to training and developing themselves. You were the only person that kept sitting down and just waiting around or whatever. So it could be a factor of different things, but you never know what it is until you ask the person, I'd like to get some feedback about what you do. Even going through relationships, even if you get rejected by your ex or something along those lines, it's good for you to be able to find out what was the reason why. You know, not that I want to get back with you, but it'd be quite good, because they might tell you that, you know, you kept doing this. I kept telling you about it, but you won't listen, you weren't taking it serious, and that's what one of the issues are. So when you're going into the next relationship or the next job or whatever, this is something that you need to be more aware of.
Yeah, I agree. I think a book I read recently, maybe like a year ago now, but one of the biggest things I advocate for, and it's really changed my life, is not avoiding the awkwardness. You know what I mean? I feel like that awkward uncomfortableness, we're always like, let's leave it. But once you address it, it's never this kind of like,
it's not as bad as what you think.
It's never as bad as you think, because you already like
have an idea.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think that makes a massive difference every opportunity when you just point out the point and say, listen, this is what I want to know. Why do you want to know? And after a while, it becomes a trait. It becomes a better.
Absolutely. So if anyone's wanted to be successful at what they do, I think you should go to the people that are successful in doing it. Ask them the relevant questions. Ask them how they got there, because everyone has a story, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who they are. They always have a story. So ask them about their story. Ask them about, you know, the knockbacks and what they did and so forth. But what you are going to find, what makes people really successful, is the grit to keep getting up and trying to learn from their mistakes and moving forward. It's they're never stopping to move forward. It's the getting up and saying, do you know what, I got knocked down today, but do you know what, tomorrow's a better day. Do you know what I mean? Let me make it better.
What moment almost finished you? Tell me. What moment was the moment where you were like, I'm almost down? When count got to 8, you know what I mean? It was 8, 9.
Silly, that's happened so often now. It's just like, it's part of it. It's just part of the process, you know. But I think these things happen to people generally across the board. I'm sure even Jeff Bezos must have experienced it now. He's trading at 200 billion, you know, as an individual. So a lot of times when he was probably starting off Amazon, he would have probably thought, like, let me throw in the towel. This ain't working. And he must have thought that many times, from Bill Gates to all the other big guys that are there trending and doing their stuff. I'm sure at one point or another they just thought, let me chuck it in. But some way, somehow, they had that realization of why I got into this in the first place. What is this? And I think you've got to have the passion for it. You've got the passion for it, you've got to have the drive for it, and you've got to push it. And if you do have the passion and drive for it, soon enough it will turn into remuneration.
Definitely. Speaking on the subject of remuneration, where podcast is 7 figures, so I need to ask you, what did it feel like when you saw your first million? What was the what was it like?
When I saw my first million, do you know what? The honest truth is, I didn't even realise I'd seen it. Do you know, because it's true, because
it's just lifestyle, you know, lifestyle.
It's true, because you're doing something continuously, and it's not a case where you stop and you kind of like say, oh, gee, this is it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is it. You kind of continue, and one day you just turn around and be like, oh, I'm actually here now. Where else can I go? Can I keep pushing? Can I keep pushing? And that's what I'm saying to you, that if you have that drive and you have that passion, once you get past the certain thresholds and things like that, you could just take it off and continue your journey. Take it off and continue your journey. And that's how I think it makes life more interesting for you. Because sometimes you stop there, and then as soon as you stop, you start retrogressing. Because you kind of put your hands back and be like, yeah, I'm there now, kind of thing, and I don't think you're really there. And a clear example is Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, Jeff, no one's stopping him.
No one's stopping him. He went through a divorce, paid out 60 odd billion to his wife, and so
one of the richest people in the world, richest women in the world.
Absolutely, but yeah, look where he is now, and this guy's not stopping. In fact, with COVID period, he's probably one who made his most wealth. Yeah. If you look at Elon Musk, Tesla, they're making one of the most amount of money now. Their stocks are going up the roof. So these are individuals that you got to look at and be like, wow, these guys are making it. They didn't have it easy.
Let me qualify. I don't condone Bezos' actions, actually. Just let me qualify that. He didn't make his wife rich. He supported him. Just before. Let me just clarify that. But we have to respect the hustle. We have to respect the hustle.
Absolutely. I mean, his wife invested 25 years or so into him, and definitely your partner does play a major part in your success as well.
You said it, and I know it as well.
You're definitely. So if you're getting up and the wife or the partner isn't supporting you and cussing you from when you're waking up to when you go to sleep, then there's a major problem there. But once you get that support, and I think that goes a long way. And it could be anything. It could be from the financial perspective. It could be from an emotional perspective. And it could be just your biggest fan at that time when you were nothing. And you're just working out a dream. So I'll definitely say that if you want to do something, be passionate about it. You never really have a clear goal as to where exactly you're going to go when you want to start something. You don't really know. I didn't know that we're going to be selling properties now for 20 million. I had no idea about that. But slowly as we started off, we started to meet different people. We started to get really positive reviews, Google reviews, Trustpilot reviews, things like that, and 5 stars and so forth. And then slowly people start hearing about us, getting in contact with us about things. And then you meet certain clientele that I've got 5 million to spend on buying a property and so forth. So this is not something that I kind of sat down and said, my first property that I want to sell has got to be 20 million. It didn't happen like that. We started off from the roots. We're renting out properties that now, those same properties, you'd be like, oh gosh, did we really rent these kind of properties out? But it's good because it gives you a history. It gives you a grassroots of where you started from. So when you look back, you can appreciate the humble beginnings, and you can appreciate where you're going to as well.
So how accessible are you to the audience? Because I think off the back of this, and I want to bring you back another time so we can talk about credit, financial literacy, but I think how accessible are you to the audience? Can people contact you directly? I'll put your details and stuff. But
absolutely.
Can people pick up the phone and...
They can pick up the phone, they can call me, they can send an email across and we'll respond and so forth. So yeah, that's not a problem at all. Okay. I'm quite good.
No, that's good, man. That's good. I feel like, I want my referral fee, bro. I'm telling you.
Listen. We, like I said, our business is based on referrals. So even if you check our reviews and things like that, and our whole concept is based on referrals, basically. And that's how we got our clients as well. So
cool,
it's
man.
good.
So could you leave us with 3 tips that you'd give to anyone who's trying to start on an entrepreneurial journey, whether it's in real estate, whether it's just in any venture? What are the 3 tips that you'd leave with them?
Wow, that's got me stuck. But I would say definitely be focused on your passion. Be passionate about what you do and become skilled at it. So develop your craft and be very good in your field. I'd also say don't just always focus on the money. I think a lot of us want to just make the quick money, but I think focus on medium to long term. But of course you need to survive for the immediate term, but I say to you, focus on the medium to long term aspect of it. And I think that's what a lot of investors do. A lot of investors look at the middle to long term. A lot of those that they invest in look at the short term. And we always know who wins that kind of scenario. And the final one I'll say to you is, once you've developed your craft and you develop your skill and you look at middle to long term, I think once is belief. Have belief in your ability. I think have belief in your ability to develop. I think that's one of the things that you probably need.
Perfect, man. I think we're going to wrap up on that point, actually. But I actually want to ask something that we might have to edit in later. But I didn't address COVID. In this current climate, are people still buying houses, and are you still available to get people houses? How is it working right now? I think it's important to address that.
I think COVID period was one of our most successful periods.
Really?
Yeah, for us, because when we started the business off, we started off online, and we were doing videos of properties. So we'll go into the property and we'll film it and so forth. So when the COVID hit, most of the big companies weren't prepared for it because they had a brand, they had a name and everything else with it. So they weren't prepared for it. So they shut shop.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't trade.
Yeah.
But for us, it was perfect season. So we got put into a Zoopla article. They wrote about us because we managed to sell a property from Hong Kong, just under $1 million.
Wow.
Yeah,
Hong Kong.
From Hong Kong, they bought property from Hong Kong.
Wow.
You know, just under £1 million from us, and they exchanged within 21 days through the COVID period, and that was just the day before it was shut down. I remember this. It was March 24th when they put a shutdown on it. That was on a Monday, and these guys had sent us an email like the week before. And I've been trying to get hold of them, send them an email, there's no response. So I managed to call up Hong Kong, and I spoke to the lady, and I remember exactly how the conversation was, because I wasn't even taking it serious. I just thought, we've sent you so many emails, you haven't responded. Is this some sort of a mess? Like, we call them messes. Anyway, cut long story short, she said, I haven't received your email, can you send it again? So I sent her the same email because it was very easy. I sent her the same email, and she was like, yeah, I've got it. I've looked at it, but I'm not too sure because of the pandemic, whether we're going to invest in it or so forth. So I was like, okay, I understand that, but is this the sort of thing that you're pretty much looking for? And she was like, yeah, it's the sort of thing we're looking for, but we're not too sure at the moment. So once the pandemic thing kind of dies off, we'll get back to you. 4 days later, she sent me a WhatsApp message saying to me, check your emails, I've sent you an offer. I was like, you sent me an offer? Like, like we haven't spoken about this for a little while. And she sent an offer. We managed to increase the offer slightly, got it tied up, and took the deposit and all that kind of stuff. And they've moved in now.
Wow.
So
yeah, that's the power of digital, man.
Yeah.
The power of digital.
So for us, that was really, really good. And because we're doing that, and we're still posting on all the platforms that we have access to, and people are seeing the success of it. On the back of that, we've got a company that sent us, I think it was about 76 units of properties to try and sell for them. Another one, he was dealing with Airbnb because the Airbnb market got shut down as well. They gave us another 72 properties to rent out for them. And these were like prime location from Hyde Park to Berkeley Square and all that kind of locations, Mayfair and all that kind of scenario, which wasn't a market that we were effectively covering at that time. These people were getting in touch with us because they were seeing us that we're really active. Yeah. So that kind of helped us a lot with the branding and things like that. So for us in COVID period was the best time. Now it's probably not the best time for us.
But you made the most of it, man. I mean, you were ahead of it.
Yeah,
you was ahead
absolutely.
Of it.
So that really helps. And so now most of the companies are doing digital stuff. They're doing the filmings and things like that. So now they do virtual tours and virtual viewings. But we were doing it from the beginning. It made it a lot easier for us to be able to do business.
Perfect, man. Trevor, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Suli. Really, really appreciate it. Do indeed follow us on Instagram or at Trevlyn Properties, and also on Facebook at Trevlyn Properties. We really appreciate you guys and look forward to seeing you. Take care.